Okay, and welcome. So today I'm going to lecture a little bit on maintaining a sketchbook and parameters for maintaining that sketchbook, what I like to do, then what I have my students do, and then I'm going to show you in this first video, I'm going to show you a few of the sketchbooks I'm maintaining currently or just maintained, and they pertain to my students' coursework, but also anyone out there nationally or internationally can use this as a starting guide point to do whatever it is that you want to do with your sketchbook. So first of all, I've got this hardbound sketchbook, and what you're going to notice here is it's a travelogue handbook. You'll see it down in through here. And they're pretty cheap, maybe $10, and they come with about two or 300 sheets of paper. And the paper's really pretty nice. It's not terribly high-end drawing paper, but it certainly isn't bad. The sketchbook, for those people who are not my students, you can get really anything you want. Hard, heavy cardstock or lighter paper. This is kind of a manila paper, and it's a little lighter, but not white. So that's that, and it's about 8 inches by maybe 10 inches across, maybe a little bit smaller than that. So what I have my students do is we use these sketchbooks, notebooks, as a way to continue to practice the craft of drawing, primarily looking at wonderful, great master examples. So what I've done, I keep a ledger of the artists I'm looking at when I draw from. For instance, Rembrandt, I see Fragonard, Bernini, Van Dyck, Carracci, Frans Hals, Goya, Delacroix, Velázquez, etc., and so on. And so you get an idea of who I'm looking at and why the greatest examples of Western art is to study from. And these particular sketchbooks mostly are head studies and portrait studies, so working with head structure or portrait structure. But you could use these for anything: feet, hands, full-bodied figures, compositional studies, whatever it is that you want to utilize. So what I'm going to do now is run through 2 or 3 of my sketchbooks just to show you a lot of examples of what I do, and then I'll talk a little bit about the process. I won't draw in this video. That'll be for another lesson coming up very shortly. But I just want to show you what one possibility is. So I'll turn the sketchbook here to let you see. Hope that fits nicely. And what I do is I work all in pen, in different colors. Here you see a sanguine, and emphasizing in certain areas the eyes in black. We have 3 different colors here: a sanguine, and then there's a brown tone, which is probably hard to see, and also a black as well. So, you know, for every study that I do, I'm working from a digital online source. So I have my laptop set up in front of me. You can't see it here, but I use a wonderful website called Web Gallery of Art, and they have an encyclopedic volume of every great Western artist and Western tradition, from the late Gothic era to the early Impressionist era. And they have an encyclopedic volume of their major works in painting, and sometimes also their preparatory sketches and drawing. But I use those paintings. I can click on an artist, click on a painting, and I'll show you that in another video. And it's a wonderful resource. It's like having every major museum at your fingertips. The quality is high, and so the reproductions are good that you can work from and also study from. Now you can use your own mirror for your own self-portrait studies, but for these examples for my students, we're using art historical reference. Now you notice I use 2 full pages. I turn it to the side and use 2 full horizontal pages, but you could turn it vertical and use 2 full vertical pages to make a horizontal. And then I notice I use washes, and we'll get into the technique of it later, but I just wanted to show you examples of what's possible here as we run through. And then now you see where I can turn it here, and you can get 2 studies now on a nice sheet here. So you've got smaller heads, so I can take up less room and then do more studies in this way. So I'll run through quite a bit here, and sometimes I do them upside down like I'm doing here. Just sometimes it's easier to turn my hand and arm the other way when I'm drawing these quick sketches. You know, in terms of time and time frame, the larger ones take probably, for me, an hour, and then the smaller ones take probably 25 to 30 minutes, depending, maybe 40 minutes sometimes if they're more rendered. So I do use mostly ink in a fountain pen or Pitt pens. Here I have a fountain pen here that I use, and it's relatively cheap. You can get these up to hundreds of dollars for the Falcons in the, I forget the name escapes me, but if you go online you can find these in various different styles and companies, but I believe the Falcon is a nice one. That one's about $150 to $200. This one was about $30 at the local art store here in Cincinnati. Or you can use Pitt pens, which are relatively cheap too as well. Let me pull one out of the drawer here so you can see it. And here's the packet. You can use these as well in different colors too. So you've got the Pitt pens, and then you've got the fountain pens that work pretty well. And then it's all about the craft of drawing. Drawing constantly, using the art historical references to your advantage. So in this case, head studies, portrait studies, head structure studies, and really you're doing studies of not only the head but the structure of the neck, which go together. They're not separate, which is important to understand and realize. And so that's something that I'll show you and demonstrate in the next video, is how to put all this together and then give you some insight on what I'm thinking. So when I do the drawing lecture, I'm probably just going to demo, and I'll talk through more quickly head structure, but head structure exercises in major demos will come later in a different material. So think of the sketchbook as your personal journal, your guide, your everyday little jotting down. If you have 15 minutes or 5 minutes sometimes, or sometimes I have hours to do sketches, whatever it takes, and just build up time, and certainly you will progress and you will get better at your craft. Now I notice I use multiple colors sometimes just to emphasize certain structures of the head or nose. Sometimes most of these are, again, very quick sketches, very, very loose, very gestural. That would be my suggestion for you, is to keep these loose, keep these gestural. Don't labor them into hours and hours per image for rendering. Now you could do that, but it might not be to your advantage in terms of time. They might get a little old. So you notice here with the image on the left, it's a very, very quick gestural sketch to get the structure, to get the placement down, and a little rendering in the nose. Same thing with the female on the right, and I did a little wash just to render out the facial structure, the ear, and the hair. Sometimes I go a little bit more in depth with the hatching of the rendering, and that's fine. You'll have your own particular style of where you're coming from, and of course you can switch inks. I tried a different ink, and this ink, you probably can't tell in the video, but it came out really fluorescent in red, which I did not like, and so I just adjusted the ink. I poured some black into the container, mixed it up, and it made it a more maroon color, which was more palatable. You could do one study per page like these, or you could do multiples per page, working on little different areas, like you're emphasizing perhaps an eye or the side of an eye. Sometimes I even leave out parts of the other areas where I just want to quickly render the eye or nose. So as you advance further, you develop the sensibility of time and technique. Don't worry about messing up. Don't worry about screwing up. That's okay. That's part of the process. Your sketchbook is your record of your learning and your building of your craft. It doesn't have to be a final finished work of art, although they can be. I certainly like looking at the sketchbooks of my favorite major artists, whether they're contemporary or art historical in nature. Why? Because they give us the bare bones or the infrastructure of how that artist thought at that time and put together their images. Whether they're building compositions or they're building just sketching for the love of sketching or for understanding. And all that kind of happens at the same time. So, I do these as a way to help my students grow and to keep fresh with the figure. I don't work with the figure professionally, at least not currently. And so this is a way for me to keep in touch with my art historical antecedents, my background, my place of start. We all have to come from somewhere. So, some of these are really quick. These are probably 10 minutes, really quick gestural notes, almost like drawing notes. And these are a little bit longer. Rembrandt's over here, maybe 30 minutes or so. And I have a blast doing these. I do these while I'm watching TV, watching Game of Thrones, catching an episode of that, or a game, or I'm listening to a lecture, a TED lecture online, or the radio, or if I'm traveling, I'll take these to the hotel if I've got a few minutes. Now, I've seen artists use their sketchbooks to sketch from life at cafes or parks, etc., and you can do that as well. That's generally not me. I use sketchbooks mainly for keeping current and relevant to help with my teaching practice, but I don't do plein air sketching or sketching from cafes or bars or wherever people gather and congregate. So if that's what you want to do, this is a perfect forum or venue for that because you have a very small scale. So again, this is not very big. Maybe, again, 6 by 10, 8 by 10 at the most. So anyway, we're getting kind of at the end of this one. A little head structure here to show a student or two. And they're just a lot of fun. I have a blast, doing these. So let me show you another one. I've got two more to show you. I'll close this one up, and this thing has a nice little binder here, so you can close it up. Take it with you, and it's got a bookmarker here. If you want to bookmark where you're at, I don't like them; they kind of get in the way. So I just take scissors and cut them off pretty nicely. So here's another one over here. This is a black one, so a little bit different color, whatever strikes your fancy. And again, I do the same thing where I keep a ledger here, and these are head portrait studies. And I think these are all larger studies, so I've turned the page. Yeah, so let me turn the orientation here, fit it in the camera, so that way you can see it. And again, it's pit pens mostly in different colors. I really like the sanguine color, but I also use the brown and the black. It's totally up to you. If you wanted to use green or if you wanted to use violet, I say why not. If those of you that are my students, however, I probably will limit you for now. But the sanguine, this orangey, burnt orange tone, the black, the brown, kind of connect to art historical references. But later on, I'm not a purist, so if you wanted to use purple and greens and whatever for another assignment, hey, or for you, those of you that are out there not taking a class or just looking at getting better at the craft of drawing, you can use whatever you want. And so again, these are all from master paintings primarily. This is a Van Gogh. Van Gogh can be challenging because anatomically sometimes it can be a little bit wonky, which gave his work such an interesting take. And I don't know if charm is the right word, but it certainly gave it a difference compared to his contemporaries. heavy washes throughout this Velasquez study, which is fine. And again, some are more heavily rendered, and some are less rendered, depending upon the time I might have or my interest. Sometimes I get bored. I'm like, okay, I've got enough information down. Or other times I might go ahead and render it out pretty fully here as well. So there is a light wash to kind of cover areas. Also washes, and these washes, by the way, are watercolor. Again, like I said, I'll show you in the next lesson. I'll demonstrate, do some drawings, and go through it step by step. But the washes are nice because they can cover a large, broad area of value without having to be so labored with hatching and cross-hatching. That can take a long time because the pen nib, again, is not very thick, and they come in various sizes. But overall, you're covering a large amount of space pretty boldly there with only a thin tip. And then I did some impressionist studies here as well. Sometimes I try to mimic, this was a tighter painting, Dutch painting, Van Eyck, and try to mimic the hatching stroke to various degrees of success. Some students ask me, how did I get the very clear dots of the eyes? You can draw around the eye, kind of make it a little bit of the highlight of the eye I'm talking about, make a little circle around it and put value in the darker part of the pupil of the eye, or the iris of the pupil, I forget. But I like to take a white permanent drawing marker and then dab into that. So I'll draw the eye without the highlight, and I'll dab into it with a white marker, and that gives you that crystal clean reflection of light coming back on the model. Here's a Van Gogh. Sometimes I get bored, I'll just render out one area. So I'll run through these a little quicker. Sometimes I'll add a little color. Sometimes I'll pull the student aside, we'll talk about head structure, how the head relates to three-dimensional box forms in any direction. This one's more painterly, so I'm using more brush work than drawing work, even though there's drawing underneath. And I don't use any graphite or pencil drawing underneath. I just start to go for the drawing. I've been doing this a long time, but if you feel more comfortable with doing a quick underneath sketch in pencil, then by all means, to figure out position and structure. I like to draw it with a looser technique, and that's not always great for other people. So certainly if you want to use a pencil, I would use like a 2H or an H graphite pencil. Keep it very light, keep it pretty loose, and don't get bogged down by detail, but get your structure, set in. So I'll go through pretty fast here, so you'll see more. And the trick is to just have a blast. Really enjoy it for what it's worth, because it is a lot of fun. And keep these over time. This whole sketchbook, I think I filled it up in about a month. And that's kind of daily working. Sometimes I had more time, sometimes I have less time. But it's kind of a daily program of just constant little study. Sometimes I throw in a little color to various degrees of success. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I don't try to go over an hour, so my patience level ends about with an hour with this size. That's good enough. Oh, here's a suggestion. So if you mess up a drawing, you don't like it, don't worry about it. Just paint over it with watercolor, layer it, which is what I've done here. I just darkened in all this background. I didn't like the drawing underneath, and I took the white marker that I used for the eye highlights and just did a drawing from that, and what came out was much nicer. This could be a study, for instance, for a lino cut or a woodblock relief print, to give you an idea of what it could come out with a print. So that's another thing to think about. So let your mess-ups be mess-ups. That's okay. And paint over them and draw over them again. It's okay. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it. Don't live and die with your sketchbook. Use it for practice and for study. And here I've done one where you can see I've used it as a horizontal by turning the 2 pages vertical. And then it just fit better, in the page that way than it did the other way as well. I think that's Gainsborough drawing did from that. Show you a few more here. Again, I could have rendered out the entire hair, but I just wanted to get a sense of the darker hair tone there. Really quick and loose. Right, and then I want to show you one more. This one is of feet, so formal studies of the feet, and here's where I've done demos of foot structure. Again, some of these are upside down, but I think you get the general idea. And we look at the structure of the foot in all its complexity, and then simplify the feet, and then get into deeper studies of the feet. And again, all of these were from master paintings, and so again, you have an encyclopedic volume of material to work from, and then whatever pose you want to put or draw from, you can utilize it. You might have several in one painting. You might do a Delacroix where there's 15 people, or a Rubens where there's 15, 20 people, and you can draw from those figures in the feet, hands, whatever it is that you want to work on. So again, roughly the same technique. Ink pen here, different colors, different variations. So hopefully this will be a guide for you. Those of you in class will talk deeper and more specific about what I want. Those of you that are out there in the general world, hope you got something out of it. It really is a wonderful way for the student or the professional to continue to work on the practice and the craft of seeing and understanding form, three-dimensional form and space. And that's what we're working on, the three-dimensional round quality, going around of the form and not flatness. And so this is a more academic approach to drawing, which is only one approach of as many as you can think of out there that I certainly like to look at. Okay, so I think you get the idea. So if you have any concerns out there, those of you in class, email me, talk to your instructor, and we'll help you along. And I hope you got something out of it, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.